talk about just a collaborative process. How would you measure a capacity and responsibility and agency from members of a collaborative process?
So when I come into a project to measure capacity in the collaborative process, I don't know how non-Indians or people who, and when I say non-Indians, like I was saying before, not my mother, because she knows a lot more about Indian stuff than I do, and then my Indian dad does. But what I'm saying is people who don't have experience working with Indian communities or are not Native themselves, they probably come in and think, oh, we have to help these Indians. You know, they might not say that out loud, but I'm sure if I could sit in their brain, when I go in, I say, how am I going to help these non-Indians? Because the Indian capacity issues to me are really two things. The first one is getting them to feel okay about these outsiders. If you call it inside-outside research, we'll use the academic term, outsiders that you're working with. So there's a lot of work that I do around that. The second thing is their capacity, the capacity generally to collaborate usually requires information storage, sharing, retrieval, blah, blah, blah. Traditional Native Americans and Native organizations, I understand we have modern day tribal colleges, I understand we have modern day tribal governments, but the people running those places are still from Native communities, and a lot of them are traditional people. Well, guess what? The digital or the written word is not privileged in Indian ways, especially traditional. Oral tradition, okay? So that means if I'm running a tribal college and I'm a traditional Native, a lot of the institutional knowledge resides within me, oral. We are oral history people. We transfer knowledge orally. This is very critical for non-Indians to understand. So the capacity on the Indian side is, how do I help them feel comfortable about documenting information, sharing information, whether it's baseline research, comparisons. Why do we have to have things in Word documents? Why do we have to have Excel or SPSS, or why do we got to take this survey or whatever? You know, data was used a lot against Indians, so they don't like it anyways. But just to go back to the traditional, knowledge is transferred orally, not in a published peer-reviewed journal, not standing on a stage as a keynoter at a really awesome national and international academic conference. That's really important to understand. So when I come in, when I think capacity building, there's not too much I got to worry about with Natives. It's pretty basic. It's how do I build the capacity for trust in relationships, which goes to collaborative process, and how do I, you have to build capacity around data, you know, around evaluation and data. You do, or research and data, whether it's terminology, sharing data, using instruments, feeling safe about it, whatever. On the non-Native side, there is so much more for capacity building in terms of collaboration, because you have to figure out where their mindset is, figure out what their methods and theories are that they most rely on. I have to try to figure out what in those methods and theories could possibly work. So like when I work with biochemists, for instance, or hardcore scientists, I talk with them about the natural cycles. I talk with them about biology. And I try to give them teachings traditionally that kind of hook into what it goes back to that learner. What is something they know, they love, they're passionate about? And then how do I expand it just a little bit? So when I think about capacity building, that's what I have to do with the Western or the non-Native folks, or the folks who don't have experience the non-Native folks who don't have experience working with Indians. And so that the capacity is very great, because they come from a very logical, left brain, structured, institutionalized, publish or perish type of environment. And that's just a very different mindset and way you walk. So my capacity building with them is very, very different. So I don't look for, I rarely call people racist. I've used ignorant a few times, but most of the time we were taught as Native people, and my mother too, who's non-Native, taught us you build connections. You find where people connect and you go from there. And from there you can grow in laughter and love and academia. You know what I'm saying? So I find ways to connect. So the capacity building, I know that academia and researchers all know how to use instruments, methods, document, but I got to get them to slow their roll, so to speak. so that they can figure out how to collaboratively integrate, coexist, so that both are benefiting. And there's going to have to be, I don't know if compromise is the right word, but there's, it's just like when water meets rocks, it works its way through, but there's a dance and there's a compromise that happens. Same thing.